And we are live. Hey, Joey, how you doing?
Good. How about you?
I'm good. Thanks for coming on the show. We're going to make the show quick and simple for everyone today. And I just want to first jump on board and ask you a couple of questions. And the first question is, what's going on with Augur these days?
Yeah. So we entered security audits earlier this summer, and we had the Serpent compiler's code reviewed. And basically, what happened is people who audited it, which were Zeppelin, found a bunch of vulnerabilities in the compiler. So what that means is we have to basically rewrite our contracts into Solidity, which is another language on Ethereum. Previously we were waiting until Ethereum supported more languages and got to rewrite into a more regular language. But since this happened, we're just going to go ahead and rewrite to Solidity now. And so that's started. You can check out the progress on our GitHub. It's I'd say it's about just over halfway done.
Okay.
Seems actually a little bit even ahead of the timeline we've been thinking, but so that should probably be done within about a month, and then we can resume security audits again. And that's kind of the main thing that's holding us back until launch is we need a clean set of audits that say everything looks good and secure.
So what's your initial roadmap? What would you like to accomplish, let's say, by like next summer?
Yes, that's a great question. So the idea would be first Augur launch with a set of bug bounty markets. So these would be markets on basically whether the money in the actual markets themselves will be stolen. So it's kind of using Augur to basically predict whether Augur is secure or not. So we'd run those for a few months. If nothing is money's not stolen, then what we would do is we'd open up the platform a bit more and have basically maximum trade limits. So you couldn't trade more than say $50 worth of Ether or something like that. Then after that runs for a few more months, then we basically open the platform up to allow the full set of market types. So you can create markets on yes or no questions, categorical questions, and even things like scalars, like what will be the price of Bitcoin next year, or the price of Apple, or something like that. And that will kind of all be live at that point. So the idea is to get through all the bug bounty kind of low-level stuff this year, and then have the full version out early next year. And then after that point, it's really kind of adding additional features for later releases. So later releases will have things like a project called 0x, which allows our trading system to be faster.
So 0x is running on top of you guys?
So we would be running so Augur has two pieces, right? One piece is the Oracle system, which is how do you get real world information into the blockchain securely? The other part is the trading part. Most of our focus has been on the Oracle system. And so for the trading part, we're going to actually use 0x once that comes out.
So that's potentially looking at around maybe Christmas of next year?
So the 0x stuff should happen before then.
Okay.
So the idea is, get the early first version out without, limits early next year. And then we should be able to integrate 0x, within a couple of months of it. The nice thing about 0x is it doesn't really require modifying our core protocol a whole lot. You can just kind of add it on as an additional contract. And then, after that point, the main kind of features that Augur really needs to be successful are it needs something like a stablecoin, so something like MakerDAO. And then, of course, it needs even faster. The two we kind of do that are Ethereum support sharding eventually, or
actually, I was going to ask you, once Ethereum does switch over to proof of stake with sharding and Casper, does that affect anything with Augur?
That's a great question. All it really does is make scalability a bit better, because scalability will improve by a bit once proof of stake happens, and then it opens the door up for sharding, which basically means you, instead of making every node run everything, kind of split it up a bit, and that should allow more scale, more transactions per second.
Okay. You mentioned earlier that everything's on Solidity. What were you ideally looking for as opposed to Solidity? Like, what language would you like it to be instead?
Yeah. So initially what we'd planned to do was, if the audits for Serpent actually went well, we would have launched with Serpent. And then once Ethereum switched to this thing called WebAssembly, which is a more efficient virtual machine, then it would support regular programming languages. So we could have written our contracts in a language called Ada, which is something that the United States Department of Defense has used for decades, and NASA uses it as well. And it's used to write very, very secure code around it to help you write secure software. one benefit though, Solidity though, is it is improving. Just last week, someone added a feature to a project called Oriente, which basically allows you to kind of automatic code review almost. And they added a feature that, say I write something in my code that's like, assert that this contract thinks it, certain that this contract always has the exact amount of ether that it thinks has.
Yeah.
So if the contract thinks it has 10 ether, it should always actually have 10 ether. You can basically formally verify that that's actually the case. So that's actually pretty cool. That's one of the big features of ADA that we would have wanted to have, and now Solidity's going to have it.
So what do you think one of the reasons why Serpent hasn't really been pushed out yet?
I think it's just because, so it was the first kind of language on Ethereum, other than like some super low level ones. But people just kind of started using Solidity because it's more like JavaScript, and that was kind of also what was marketed more. I like Serpent because it's much simpler. There's a lot less features. The big negative with it is it's not a big community around it, and as the compiler has all the errors, people didn't notice them because nobody uses it anymore. So for that reason, we're switching to Solidity.
Cool. So you mentioned once you guys are live, once the bug bounties are done, you guys are going to be working with 0x or hooking up with them. I'm curious, who are your ideal clients? Who would be using Augur on a day-to-day basis?
Right. So, the ideal user of Augur is someone who, one of two things. Either want to speculate on something and they want to do it cheaper than they can today. So a great example of this is, if you're betting on a soccer match in the UK or in China, you're paying 10%, 15% in fees.
Yep.
On Augur, you can do that for, a fraction of a percent. So it's taking things that are expensive and making them cheaper, which is a more efficient economy. The other category is things where you want to speculate on something, but you can't today for whatever reason. A perfect example of this is, say I'm a Chinese investor. I really want to buy Apple, but I'm actually forced to buy these stocks in the Chinese stock market.
Yep.
A lot of which are much more volatile and a lot not as good companies as say Apple or Google or something like that. And so you can't buy it in the U.S. because you can't get your money out to U.S. brokers because they won't take it. But what you could do is buy Ethereum Bitcoin on an exchange in China, convert it to Ether, and then buy a derivative peg to the price of Apple and Augur. So there's going to be a market that says, what will the price of Apple be at the end of next year? And you can basically buy that. And it's effectively giving you the same profit and loss you would get as if you actually bought Apple. That's pretty cool, I think.
That is really cool. So switching gears, you recently just joined Pantera, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
So based on your new role over there, which by the way, congratulations.
Thanks.
Where do you currently see the cryptocurrency ecosystem at? Like, what's your current take of it?
Yeah, so I think right now we're in dial-up, as the internet was in the very early 90s. And I think so what that means in blockchain speak is the stuff doesn't really scale yet. So Bitcoin does 7 transactions a second. Ethereum does, maybe 10. For something like Augur to succeed, it needs to really do many thousands. Because if you're going to compete with, say a derivatives platform on Wall Street, they're doing tens of thousands of transactions a second. That said, I think that actually can happen. I think of all the scalability stuff people are working on, I think in the next 3 or 4 years, we're actually going to be very surprised at how scalable something like Ethereum is. And the reason is, people think it's going to be much harder than it actually is because if you look at Bitcoin, they're kind of unwilling to implement radical changes at scale, whereas the Ethereum developers are much more willing to do that. They're willing to, have the risk of breaking something, but then go ahead and fix it and keep iterating. The space overall, I feel it's very exuberant right now. The markets are super high. I think that people are investing into a lot of the wrong projects, meaning that they don't make technical sense or they don't make economic sense. Basically just because like the incentives don't add up. And I think once we see a bit of a correction, this happens in any new market, people lose their money and realize that, oh, you shouldn't have been investing in projects that are making rent-seeking tokens that should just be removed because they're not adding any value. Then I think at that point we'll see a much more sustainable, steady, rate of growth. I'm pretty excited for that.
So what's your prediction for that? You're thinking like 2-3 years from now?
Yeah, so it's hard to know when we're going to see a correction. It's just something you can always bet on that markets never go straight up. They always
I wish there was a
something.
prediction market we can bet on this.
Yeah, hopefully soon there will be. But yeah, I think even though there's going to be a correction, as long as you're investing in stuff that's actually good projects, it affects you a bit less. Like, if you bought Apple, Amazon, Google during the dot-com bubble,
Yep.
yeah, it sucked because you lost some money in 2000, 2001. But 5-10 years later, you were pretty glad that you bought them then instead of waiting.
That's right. Let me ask you this question though, because I think one of the biggest barriers to entry in this space is actual purchasing of crypto. Most people would have to go on an exchange and do KYC, AML, which I get it. But what do you think are solutions for? Because let's be honest, a lot of the people in the world, let's say if it's like Latin America or even Africa or even some remote places in Eastern Europe, it's quite difficult for them to purchase crypto. So what do you think are some solutions you can see in the future that can make it maybe easier for people to acquire cryptocurrencies?
Right. So there's the short to midterm, there's the far off. In the short to midterm, I think as there start being more exchanges in more of these places, it increases access of it. So an exchange in a country in Africa, like say Kenya, looks pretty different than say Coinbase in the U.S. You're probably using something like M-Pesa to buy or phone credits or something to buy crypto instead of hooking it up to your bank account. And so I think those things will help people get in. And then on that, I think we'll see some governments actually start issuing cryptocurrencies pegged to their fiat money. So that will be kind of another way for people to get in. The interesting part is
I always said crypto is a perfect government money because it's fully trackable.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So like you think about it, I even kind of have this idea where, say 20 years from now, and there's something like everyone's using say ZK snark proofs to make it so you can't trace the money, right? And the government's losing a bunch of tax revenue. If you're a government, the United States, the way taxation works is you basically have to report what you earned, and if you don't do it, they can go after you, but they don't really kind of know until quite a bit of investigation. There's a lot of money kind of left on the table. So if the government issued a cryptocurrency and basically tracked everything that way, they could even have a program where they're like, we'll let you pay 25% less in taxes if you use this cryptocurrency instead of doing the thing where you report on your tax forms and we hope that you report it honestly. So I could definitely see something like that happening. The cool part of that is once you have cryptocurrency, it makes it very easy to exchange it for other cryptocurrency, and then you can get Bitcoin, Ether. Say you want Maker instead of the USD coin. Then it gets pretty exciting.
Awesome. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. Like I said, I'll keep it super short. And I just want to congratulate you on all your success with Augur and with Pantera, with the fund. If people want to get a hold of you or if they want to find out more what you do, what's the best resource?
So you can email me at joeykrug@gmail.com, or really best place is, if you ping me in the Augur Slack, I'm almost guaranteed to respond to you there. Much better at Slack than emails. So it's open Slack too if you just join it at augur.net.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Joey, and have a great day.
Thanks.
Cheers.